with my first video after 9 months away, and it's going to be a Christmas one. Today, I'll be showing you how I create a tabletop Christmas tree using vintage and vintage-inspired jewelry. But before we get into the video, for those of you that are either new to my channel or maybe don't remember who I am, which is perfectly understandable, hi, my name is Catherine, and I absolutely love decorating for the holidays, evidenced by the fact that I'm already starting my Christmas crafting in September. But I also love fashion and beauty. So if you love any or all of those topics, then I hope you'll consider subscribing and ringing that notification bell so you know when I post next videos. And don't worry, I don't plan on going another 9 months before I post more content. I'm actually in the middle of my holiday home decor planning right now, and I've got a lot of fun stuff that I'm going to be doing this year, new and different, so of course I'll be filming it and sharing it with you guys. So now let's go ahead and get into it. If you're anything like me, then you probably have some vintage jewelry that has a lot of sentimental value and that's really pretty you enjoy looking at, but maybe you don't wear it all that often. So as I was in the middle of some of this holiday planning, I thought it would be nice to bring a little more Christmas into my closet/dressing room, and I thought somehow incorporating this jewelry would be a great way to do it. So I came up with the idea for creating this tree. So I'm going to take some of the beautiful pieces that my mom has given me, that I've gotten from my grandmother, and even some of my own pieces that I've collected through the years. And then I'm going to add in a few things that I did buy just new, just in order to kind of round out the collection that I have, so I can create this beautiful tabletop topiary using all of these pieces. And I think it's going to be perfect not only for Christmas, but it's potentially something that I'll be able to use all year long, a little bit as a display piece. So let's go ahead and get started with the materials that I'm going to use. The first thing that I'm going to be using is floral foam in a cone shape to actually create the shape of the tree. These come in different sizes. I've chosen the 8.9 inch. To cover the tree, I'm going to use this metallic craft tape. Comes in a bunch of different colors, but I thought this bronzy gold color would look great with the jewelry that I'm going to be using. And of course, I'll need a good sharp pair of scissors in order to cut this sticky tape. Next, I'm going to be using a variety of my vintage and vintage-inspired jewelry pieces, and I'm going to need a lot of them. But get creative when you're thinking about the types of jewelry that you can use. For mine, I'm going to be using some brooches, various bracelets, all different types of necklaces, earrings, and even this inexpensive piece of costume jewelry that I've had for years. I'm also going to use some needle nose pliers and wire cutters to disassemble some of the jewelry that I don't mind ruining, but will be easier to use taken apart. I'm going to attach the items using both greening pins and these little thumbtacks that have gold balls. Then I've got a couple of random tools that come from actually my nail stash. I've got one of these little daughters which allows you to pick up small stones, so then you can use this little tiny glue tip to be able to glue things on. For my base, I'm going to use an old candlestick holder that I have. And then to affix the tree to the candlestick, I'm just going to use some Gorilla Glue because it works really well with adhering to glass. You'll notice I did not mention hot glue, and that's because, for one, I actually just find using hot glue to be a bit of a pain, but also some of these pieces I don't want to ruin, and therefore I would rather pin them to the tree so I can take them off and wear them again in the future if I'd like. So now I'm going to pan down so you can see a little more closely exactly what I'm going to be doing. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is covering my floral foam with the metallic craft tape. Now keep in mind, if you're doing this project, when you're picking out your piece of floral foam, think about how much jewelry you have. Obviously, the bigger the piece of foam, the more jewelry that you're going to need. So basically, to cover the floral foam, I'm just going to take this tape, which is very strong and sticky, and I'm going to just roll some out. I'm going to just kind of start at the top, and luckily I did test this, it does stick pretty easily to this. I'm just going to roll it all the way down until I get to the bottom. Then I'm going to take my sharp scissors, and then I'm just going to fold it on the underneath. So that way I've got kind of a candy cane stripe all the way around. Now I'm just going to continue that process until I've wrapped all the way around the tree. Then I'm just going to take one last piece of tape that I cut, and I'm just going to put that over the bottom just to make sure all of those ripples and ridges are kind of taped down so that I have a decently flat surface. Don't worry if there's some ripples and ridges and things actually on the outside part of the cone shape itself. We're going to be covering this up mostly with the jewelry. This is just so you don't have to worry about seeing through to the piece of floral foam. Now that we have our cone covered in the tape, it's time to actually start figuring out how we want to arrange the jewelry onto the cone and putting it on. So let's take a minute to talk about all the pieces that I have here and how I'm thinking about using them. So as I mentioned, I have jewelry of all sorts. So, some of this jewelry, like this bracelet, I may want to wear it again someday, so I want to just basically use it as is. So I'm going to attach it. I will probably take a big piece like this and actually, since I'm keeping it all in one piece, maybe make that, something that goes around the bottom. But some of the other bracelets, these are just inexpensive pieces of costume jewelry that, I was given to play with or things through the years. I will probably take some of these things actually apart by just pulling apart some of the links that connect them or clipping through them with wire cutters if I need to, so I can use the individual pieces to kind of intersperse throughout. A lot of these brooches, I know I don't want to destroy because I do like to wear brooches from time to time. I just don't do it that regularly. But, I will attach these with pins, and something like this, which is a big brooch, this is something that I will probably use more towards the bottom since it's weighty visually. I would want it to be at the bottom of the tree, whereas, some of the smaller brooches I might put more towards the top. And I've got a few pairs of earrings. Then we start getting into the necklaces. And here I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to use some of these. This necklace right here is actually just a piece of jewelry I bought many, many years ago, kind of when those bib necklaces were in fashion. But, the ribbon is kind of gross now, so I'm never going to wear it like this again. So I don't mind taking this apart and then once again using these as individual pieces that I can intersperse throughout the tree to make sure I've kind of got good balance. And then I've got some things that are more chain type necklaces. I may see if I want to, kind of wrap it around and pin it some way so it almost looks like a garland on the tree. And same with some of these other more chain ball type necklaces. And then this is another piece that I've just, bought, years ago, and I loved wearing it, but, it was inexpensive. The chain is tarnished, and I thought this might make a, cool tree topper. So I'm going to actually take the chain off of this and then stick the round bail at the top into the top and use that as my tree topper. And then I do have some bracelets over here that I will probably take apart as well. So I can use some of these as just individual rhinestones to be able to just kind of dot in where the jewelry itself maybe doesn't completely cover, and I just need some small pieces to do that. Now you'll notice that this is really kind of all in a gold theme. I do have some other jewelry that's more silver toned or darker toned, but when I started to think about how I wanted the tree to come together, I decided to keep all of this in kind of the gold tone, but I'm estimating that I don't have quite enough of just the jewelry that I have. So I did buy some additional brooches from Amazon. These came in a set, so there's 24. I did buy these so I can enhance what I have. These are probably going to be things that I use more as filler than prominent things. So I will probably end up placing these more as secondary kinds of things where I start finding gaps that I don't have better pieces already there for them. And then as I mentioned, I'm going to be using pins to affix these. So this is what a greening pin looks like. It's actually for doing floral type activities. These are just some I have left over from another project where I created a wreath out of vintage ornaments. And once again, I didn't want to glue the ornaments on, so I used the greening pins in order to affix them. So I just already had these. But I did also find these little push pins that I will use for some of these things that have gaps where I think I can use the push pin to stick it in a little bit more easily than the greening pin. And because it's just got a gold ball at the end, I think it'll blend right in. So the idea is, if you're looking at any one individual piece, you might see how you stuck it in, but when you take a step back and are looking at it in totality, there's going to be so much going on, so many metallics and so many jewels and all of that, that your eye doesn't really notice either the silver greening pins or these. And where the pins won't work, I will use my little rhinestone daughter and rhinestone glue to just actually affix it on. Now that I have a semi-plan for what I'm gonna do, I do wanna go ahead and take apart the things that I know I wanna take apart, because I think once I start placing stuff, I'm just probably gonna get into a rhythm and wanna just continue with that. So I'm just gonna quickly take some of this that I've already decided will be taken apart and go ahead and work on that. I'm finding it's easy enough on this one to just snip through with the wire cutters, but you could alternatively use the needle nose pliers to actually pry the little jump ring apart if you would prefer. All right, I now have everything taken apart that I know I want to be apart, so let's start putting things on. So as I mentioned, I'm not entirely sure how I want to use things like these strands of beads. So what I'm trying to see is, do I want to start with this wrapped around almost like you would a garland, in which case I'll want to put any of these on first before I start adding my other items. So I'm gonna put some of these on and then we'll play around. But for this, I'm going to use my small little thumbtacks, because I actually have some really good holes in the clasps of this that will allow me to just stick that in and then run this around. And if I need to put a greening pin in the middle to kind of give it some stability to stay in the spot that I want, then I'll do that then. That's what that looks like. Now I'll take another one and run it maybe in between. I think I like that, but I won't know for sure until I get a little further in. So now I'm going to start by placing some of the bulkier objects. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be doing this a little bit down lower. So I'm going to start by placing this. And my idea here is I'm going to actually run it right along the bottom. I'm going to put it right next to what we just ended with right there. But for this, I do think I'm going to use greening pins because it is heavy, and I don't think those little push pins would hold very well. So I'm just going to start by placing a couple of these in. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting some of the greening pins actually through the jump rings themselves, so they hold it in place a little bit better that way. So now I'm going to start placing some of the bigger brooches and other pieces, and just probably work mostly from the bottom up the tree, knowing that I'll have some gaps that I have to come and fill in a little bit. So I'll go ahead and put on a little bit of Christmas music and speed up the video so you can watch me put this on a lot faster in the video than it will be in real life. But while you're watching, go ahead and jump down in the comments, and I'm really curious to know who's watching this video after I've been away for 9 months. Let me know whether you're an old friend who's seen my videos before, or whether you're a new friend. Either way, I'm really happy to have you here, so thank you. It is looking. I'm pretty well got it filled in, although I still do have a few more supplies that I could use, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and get the topper on and kind of finish out the top before I decide if there's anything else I want to do. And by the way, this is not actually affixed yet to the candlestick holder. I just put it there because it was getting hard to work on the bottom with it sitting on this. So this is what I have for the topper, and it has the bail. So let's go ahead and, oh, had a casualty there, but stuck that in. Let me go ahead and fix the guy that came off. That is the one thing about these push pins, is they're not super long. So if you're not getting good contact, then it's easy to have the push pins come out. All right, so now I think I'm just gonna literally take this chain and just kind of start wrapping it around just to kind of marry it together, and then we'll kind of see where we need to go from there. And this is actually serving a couple of purposes. It's also helping disguise some of the pins, the greening pins that are up at the top that I don't necessarily want to see as much of. Before we get any further, I am going to go ahead and attach the base to the bottom of this. And for that, I'm using my Gorilla Glue, and this is a new one. By the way, let me know your favorite Christmas song down in the comments below. All right, we'll leave that to dry for a few minutes, then come back and finish this out. And here's the final product. I really like the way it turned out. I do think it is very cute, although I did learn a couple of things during the process. The first is with the push pins, which I mentioned earlier. And the second is, I think in hindsight, I would not do the beaded strands like Garland as I did, because what it meant was with some of the items that I was putting on, because they were a certain size, I almost ended up having to stair step them linearly in that same diagonal, and I didn't really like that as much. So in some cases I ended up actually going over and kind of blocking the garlands just so I could get a little bit more of that randomness pattern. But otherwise, I really like how this turned out. If you were going to give this as a gift, I would say that the push pins are probably not the way to go. You would probably want to resort to hot glue, but because this is for my own personal use and I didn't want to ruin some of the jewelry, I do feel like this will work just fine, and I can take some of the pieces off and actually wear them if I want to, and then probably even put them right back on here if I'd like. Whew, I made it through my first video back in 9 months, and I had such a good time doing it. I really did enjoy doing a fun Christmas craft. It was good to start to get in kind of the creative spirit again. So I had fun. I hope you've had fun. If so, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. It is one of the most helpful things that you can do here on my channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I will have a lot more fun holiday videos coming up, as well as some fashion and beauty sprinkled in as well. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye. Using vintage and vintage-inspired ornament pieces of jewelry.